Let's go to foreign climes and dream of foreign climes. Eoghan Corry, how are you?
Not bad at all this morning, Damien. How are you? How's everybody in Asia?
We're in great form. The tropical southeast. It's no longer the sunny southeast. The tropical southeast. We'll rename ourselves. And I was just talking to a chap recently. He's over in Spain there at the minute. Send me a specific question about trying to get home from Spain in terms of PCR tests and matters such as that. For example, do you have to have your vaccination if you've had COVID-19? Do you need a PCR test and many other things decide? Talk to me if you wouldn't mind, please. Anybody who's going away, firstly, let's say going to Britain over the next month, going for a weekend away to Britain, going over to see a match, going to see Man United lose, going to whatever. What do they need and how are they going to be able to get that?
They're going to, it depends on if they're double vaccinated, they need an antigen. If they're not double vaccinated, they'll need a PCR, not going out, but coming back. Very important, your PCR is valid for 72 hours. Your antigen is valid for 48 hours. Getting your test in advance before you travel means it'll be valid for your return if you're going over to watch one of those teams lose that shall remain nameless.
Okay, so if you let's say you're going on Friday evening for a match or a weekend or going to visit relations over in England on the Saturday, Sunday, PCR is valid for 48 hours, antigen is valid for 72 hours, or the other way around, is it?
The other way around. PCR 72, okay. Antigen 48. Most people go to soccer for a day trip.
Okay, so you can get that in Ireland. Let's say you're having a long weekend and you won't have that capability to do that. Where do you go in England to book these tests, or what do you do? Or because a lot of people will say, gosh, I'd have no clue about how to get these things in England or Wales or Scotland.
Usually you'll get a clinic. There are available. Most airports have them for the antigen test now. The beauty of the antigen test, Damien, is that it comes back sometimes within minutes. I've been at events where you have to be antigen tested to enter. You queue, you get your antigen test, and then you're allowed into the event. So it comes back fairly quickly, half an hour, an hour. PCR is more complicated. You get it, you do it the day before. You usually get your results in a form by email in the following morning. Sometimes it's just after midnight. But they're easily found. The professional test, and this is important, the regulations say a professional test without actually defining what a professional test is. But I presume it's one done in a clinic or by a doctor, and there'd be a grey area if it's done by a pharmacist, because a lot of the pharmacists are offering this sort of service, especially in England. Anyway, the main thing is antigen suffices if you're double vaccinated. The result comes quickly. PCR, generally, you need to do an day in advance.
Okay.
If you're not vaccinated.
Okay. Well, again, you're not a health expert. I know that, Eoghan, but you're aware of the health, I suppose, guidelines on this. So let's say I'm in Manchester. I'm not going to go and get a PCR test. I need to get an antigen test. And I go into a pharmacy and the pharmacist says, yeah, this one will do you fine. And I'll sign this letter here to say that I did it. So it implies it was done professionally. Are you saying that they could actually stop you at the airport in Dublin when you come back, that it may not be deemed as professional?
The definition hasn't been really clarified. This was rushed
surprise, surprise.
Very hurriedly.
Surprise.
No, but it's even worse than that, Damien, because it's not going to be immigration in Dublin that will stop you. It'll be the person at the gate. And you don't have epidemiologists, checking your boarding pass.
Go away.
For Ryanair, right across Europe.
It's the 25-year-old, sorry for interrupting, Eoghan, it's the 25-year-old person at the gate who's checking to see if you're carrying an extra bag is going to make a decision on your medical whereabouts. Is that it?
They're the ones who have been tasked with this by this ridiculous legislation. And they're going to be English isn't going to be their first language, and they're occasionally going to be dealing in another language. Let's say the Cyrillic alphabet in Bulgaria. You've got your certificate, and the reason is the government has thrown it onto the airlines and the airline staff and sometimes they're not even the airline staff, they're subcontracted to a service agent at a regional airport across Europe that will make the decision whether you're let on board, because the airline will be penalised if someone gets on board who hasn't got the correct documentation.
How much will they be penalised?
The fines can be horrific. The fines can be €400 for a passenger, which is when you're dealing at a €20 flight, can be very high.
Okay.
The regulations were there to stop people coming through with incorrect visas, out-of-date passports. All of that happened. But unfortunately, the regulations that were there for very serious offences are now being pushed into. I'm not saying that it's not a serious offence to travel without the correct medical documentation, but it's not clearly defined. It's not something that has been established by the rule of law over 100 years.
Okay, my friend Simon has just texted me back from Spain, so he's in Spain at the minute. Are you saying then that he needs to go to a specific antigen test centre, whatever the case may be, make sure? How does he know that this is going to be compliant with the rules? And then he's going to go to the gate. How does he know that that person at the gate, who may well be Spanish, is going to be able to say, yes, I'm going to let you on? He could be stopped.
It's quite, it's easy enough in Spain because there are 3 or 4 huge providers that operate nationally and operate in the airports. And they do this, they do it for big events, and they've been doing it for international travel. Because remember, we all had to do this for international travel before July the 8th. So identifying someone whose antigen test, and that's all he needs if he's double vaccinated, is recognised by the airline, isn't that difficult. For instance, flying out to Spain, Rockdock and Randox, they're both based at airports. They're the ones that the airlines are already familiar with. I wouldn't suspect there will be a problem with the, at the gate. If you've got a major company, it's when you're producing something that isn't very familiar to the gate at the staff. That's where the problems arise.
Oh, my
really
goodness.
Familiarity rather than the medical decision that we're dealing with here.
Okay, couple of specific questions, Owen. Going to Britain on the 28th until the 31st of December. I'm double vaccinated. I'll do the antigen testing. What about my 9-year-old child? Does he need to be tested also, or are children exempt?
Really important. Up to 12, you're exempt. And it's your 12th birthday, not your 13th birthday. 12 years and 1 day, you have to do a test. 11 years, 364 days, you don't.
I'm going to Tenerife for a week. What do I need? I'm fully vaccinated, says Paul.
You will need your locator form going out. The Spanish locator form is a little bit tricky. And the reason it's tricky is it asks for your municipality. It doesn't actually ask for Tenerife. It asks for the municipality in Tenerife. Now, the municipalities in Spain are like GA clubs in Ireland. They're quite house proud and they don't merge very easily. And the reason is that there's 8,000 of them because of the nature of the Reconquista many years ago. And a lot of people going to Spain barely know what's going to Santa Ponza for a session, barely know what country they're going to, never mind what municipality. Locator form going out and coming back, you will need that antigen test if you're double vaccinated. You'll also need, and a lot of people are forgetting this, a locator form for Ireland. The locator form for Ireland has been required all through. A lot of people land in Dublin and they haven't got it done. Once you've got the locator form for Spain, by the way, it generates its own QR code. So they don't tend to look for your digital COVID certificate once a QR code has been generated because you can't have one without the other.
Person is going to Manchester next Wednesday for one night. Do I get the test at Dublin Airport, for example?
You can get the test at Dublin Airport. It'll apply for your return. Remember, you don't need a test going into England. You do need one on return.
I'm going over to Luton to pick up my daughter at Luton Airport, returning a couple of hours later. Will I need an antigen test both ways? Will one test do either side?
One test will do. Remember, it's not required to go to Britain at all. Britain requires it from other countries, but not Ireland. Interestingly enough, Boris Johnson is implementing the common travel area to the letter of the law. Micheál Martin isn't.
Another texter saying, how come over the summer holidays I was able to use a COVID cert? Now I have a booster as well. I'm going to London to see the family for Christmas. I have to have a test coming back. Why is this happening?
That's a question for our medical authorities that the European Commission are also interested in, because it took a long time to implement that agreement that came in July, that travel within the European Union should go without restrictions. The emergency brake system was designed for non-EU travel. For instance, the countries have implemented it for people arriving from Africa, but we pretty much as one or as a group of two have decided to implement it on inter-EU travel, very much a breach of the spirit of the agreement.
A person is going to the States for 9 days. Does the person have to quarantine?
No, absolutely not quarantine for the States, but very important. You do need an antigen test going to the United States. Now, I would highly recommend you do a PCR, because certainly the noise coming from USA this week is that they're going to increase the restrictions. From where my trained ear, that means they're going to no longer accept antigen, because they've already made noise that it has to be more than 24 hours in advance, and they're going to require PCR. Very important also, Canada requires a PCR. It doesn't recognise antigen. We've had people flying to the United States, to Florida or Chicago and places, through Toronto, being turned back at the gate because of an antigen, not a PCR. Go for PCR, don't trust antigen if you're going to the States, but no quarantine required.
Some very good advice. Eoghan Corry, as ever, thank you very much.
Always a great pleasure.
Thanks, Eoghan. God bless. Mind yourself. Thank you very much there. Eoghan Corry, travel expert, with some very, very good, simple questions.